interest in agriculture in general and agricultural engineering in particular was informed by my early growth. I grew up in a community of farmers, and so most of the time I would accompany my mother to the farm. And as you can imagine, in those days, farm work was all about use of cutlass and hoes to till the soil, to cut grass, till the soil, and even raising of livestock everything was also done manually. So at that early stage, I saw and experienced a lot of drudgery, suffering, bending down for hours to cultivate the soil. And then at the end of the day, with very low technology input and very low even biochemical inputs, what we got out as yield was also low. So I started asking myself, is there no way to make this work of producing food a better environment? And so that's now led me to start thinking about science of agriculture. And then as I got to the final year in secondary school, I came to realize that there is an aspect of agriculture called agricultural mechanization, where you can use machines to till the soil, where you can process things using machines, where you can provide all-season farming using irrigation systems. So when I was filling my form to apply to University of Nigeria, so I decided from the one that I was going to do agricultural engineering to learn and see how I can get involved in mechanized farming and using technology for food production, food processing, and so on. Most likely I would have become a priest, because I grew up also in the missions. My father was a church teacher, a catechist, and so all my young life I was always living in mission. So I saw the grandfathers as models of what life should be. But somehow I didn't make it into priesthood. So if I wasn't an engineer, I would have also been a priest. Yeah, what I can say I miss most was the academic environment of University of Nigeria, Nsukka. It's an environment that you can come in with nothing and leave that university with everything you can dream of, irrespective of who you are. The environment was just a good environment for studies. And then we met what I may call the best professors you can think of. In those days, we had very prominent professors that we heard their names, but I saw myself live with them. People like Prof. Engr that taught us general studies, history, and things like that. Names like Chinua Achebe. Even in our engineering side, names like Professor Zuzamaka of civil engineering. These were very big names in the academic world. And so one of the things that thrilled me was seeing these human beings live. Before then, we thought they were not normal human beings, but seeing them in class, teaching us everything we dreamed of. You can imagine after reading Things Fall Apart, coming to the University of Nigeria to see Chinua Achebe live. You can actually feel him, see him, talk to him. People like Dr. Okadibo, who later became a politician. So we had all these big names in academics. in all areas of science, engineering, humanities, and so on. So that environment was really something that really made me say, wow, you are able to see all these big names and learn from them. Of course, in those days, we also had foreigners who were not just Nigerians, but including some white people who were there. So the Nsukka environment was an environment that you can see everybody in academics, irrespective of where you come from and irrespective of your disciplines. And I must say, one of the other things I saw that was really good about Nsukka was the concept of training, making you to become the total man. Even though I studied engineering, the curriculum was such that it was really diverse. So you are not just studying that your small area of engineering, you also study other areas of engineering. And then beyond engineering, the concept of general studies was really very strong. And so even in engineering, we also took courses in philosophy, logic, Nigerian peoples and culture, and so on. Those things that make you to understand that this world is just one small place, but of course with different diverse backgrounds. And of course, not to talk of languages, we had to do English, use of English, we had to do history, even though we were engineering students, not to talk of the other mathematics, computer science, and so on. And in fact, one interesting thing that I can tell you is that as a minor, I got interested in music, and so I was also spending some time in music department, studying all those classics and so on. So Nsukka provided that thing that makes you a total man, that you understand your environment and you are able to fit into anywhere you find yourself as you leave the university. I went to Canada for postgraduate studies, to further my postgraduate studies. And so I did this PhD in Halifax, Technical University of Nova Scotia. So the shock I had in Canada started from the same day. Well, you can say environmental plus then cultural. First of all, when we landed, it was during winter. And so our plane was prevented from landing, and the pilot told us that it was snowing, so we couldn't land, and so it was hovering for the next 1 or 2 hours. And so by the time we landed, I looked around everywhere. At the time the plane landed and was taxiing, I was just looking through the window, and everywhere was white. And this was my first experience of experiencing snow and ice beyond what I saw in movies. You know, when you see these movies, you think they are just movies, but seeing me landing in a place everywhere is white, and of course we are all warned about the weather. The weather had gone down to, the temperature had gone down to about -5, and you can imagine coming from +30 or 30 something to experience -5. Although they also take care of the environment in such a way that while you are inside the airport or you are in a car, you don't really feel it. But it has some effect on you as a human being, because as we left the airport, I could see that everybody was freezing, and you to see smoke coming out from your mouth when you are talking. So all these affected me to the point that I now notice why people over there are a little cold or a little not as warm as our people are, because we are battling with cold, and so there is no time to exchange pleasantries when you meet people. So that was the first cultural shock I had. You meet people on the hallway or corridors, and you want to greet the person good morning, and the person just say hi, and he's gone. And you'll be wondering, what did I do wrong to this person? But actually, I later now came to realize that that's just their way of life. There was no time to waste with pleasantries like we'll have it in Africa. How is your mother? How is your father? What do you eat in the morning? The average Canadian has no time for such. It's just hi, and but gradually, of course, I had to adapt to that kind of environment and that kind of culture. And then the other culture shock I had was the difference between a white man and a black man. There's quite a lot of gaps between the two. As Africans, we are used to being friendly, being loud, but the average white man doesn't have time for all that. He can be discussing with somebody as I'm sitting with you now, and the person sitting there won't even hear the conversation. Whereas as an African, we are more used to shouting or raising our voice when we are talking and so on. And then the other kind of shock, cultural thing I also saw was the way we behave as human beings. A white man or a Canadian, let me use the word Canadian, if you ask him for something and he says no, that no is no. But as an African, somebody can tell you no, and you try to say, what if this, when you do that to a Canadian, he gets upset because he has already told you no. Same thing happens with yes. If you ask something from him or her and he says yes, that's it. You don't really need to go further to begin to plead or, against or for what you're looking for, which is not the African way of doing things. And what we are used to in Africa is that even when you say no, this is not right, or this cannot happen, a typical Nigerian will say no, but maybe you can find a way to do this. And so these are some of the things. And of course, other than that, it was a very interesting environment that it's just that people are different. From where I was in Nigeria, and then seeing the different environment, a different set of people, and how they do their things. And then finally, I don't know if that's cultural, there's also the issue of time. Over there, if a meeting is supposed to start at 1 it starts. If there's any reason why it will not start, then you'll be told. Again, coming from Africa, I think the first set of meetings I had actually was too late. But of course, gradually I immediately adjusted myself and know that once if it's 12 o'clock, it's 12 o'clock. And if it's going to last for 30 minutes is done, and everybody goes. So these are some of the cultural shocks that I had. Of course, there is the other one. I don't know if it's cultural, the issue of language. I thought I had studied all my life in English. And I actually took a TOEFL, which is test of English as a foreign language. So I thought I knew English, having studied all the way up to master's. But of course, the first 2 weeks, one shock I had was that I'll be in the class and I will get up to 20% of what the lecturer taught. And and then when I speak, I also notice the lecturer keeps saying, pardon me, sorry. It's obvious that the lecturer was not picking what I was saying. And I later, turned this into a joke. I told them they were not speaking English because I know English belonged to the British, and I was speaking British English, and they were speaking Canadian or American English. But gradually, in fact, at some point I was asking myself, I think after 3 weeks, 4 weeks, somehow my ears or my brain or whatever adjusted to their fast way of speaking, and then gradually also they are now able to pick what I say when I speak. So it was also a very a very serious shock for me at that initial stage. At some point, it was also becoming difficult for me to communicate with my classmates at that initial stage because you feel when you speak, they won't understand you, and when they speak, you don't want to say, "Well, I can't understand what you're saying." But gradually, all these things fizzled out, and then it became easy for me to understand when they speak, and then vice versa. Well, I would say it was an advice I got from my late supervisor for my bachelor's and my master's program. That man believed in me, even when I didn't know anything. He felt I knew something. And I remember when I was actually looking for a job in one company in Port Harcourt. I did my youth service in Port Harcourt. And there was this fertilizer company that was started at that time. I think it's called NAFCON. I don't know. I'm not sure it's still in existence. Having a job in NAFCON, that's National Fertilizer Company, was like having a job in Shell or any of the oil companies. And so I had applied to NAFCON, and they asked me to bring a referee report. So I went to Nsukka. I went back to Nsukka to ask my supervisor. My supervisor at that time, he supervised my my bachelor's degree project. That's the late Professor Onwualu. And so when I came, he was the head of department. And I said, "Sir, I just want you to help me to write a referee report for me that I have this offer to." So he looked at it and said, "When you were living here, I told you immediately after your youth service you should return. And you are coming to ask me to write a referee report for you, that he will do that, but that he's advising me to forget about this NAFCON and return here to be a graduate assistant." Now that tore me apart because I was looking at coming from a very humble background. My dad was late then. My mother was just a very poor, illiterate farmer in the village. So I was anxious to start making money. And then here was an offer from this National Fertilizer Company. And then this man is advising me to return to start masters, do masters, and then. So this man advised me, he said, "I see you as a professor, not as an MD of a company. So I should return and pick up the master's program form. And that if I'm worried about money, that it was going to make me a graduate assistant and all that and all that." And I sat down, I was calculating how long it would take to do master's, do PhD before I now begin to, and then comparing that with working in a company. And but I took that advice. I took his advice and turned back against that offer that I had to. But I must tell you, and I haven't regretted that since I took that advice from him. All I want to be remembered for was knowledge. For me, I grew up, like I said, from a very humble environment with nothing in my head. Even though I hear my parents, I hear my teachers say, "Oh, he's good in mathematics, it's this," but I didn't really know much. The only thing I can remember is that each time I write the exam, I notice I have 90, 80, 100%. But I really didn't know much. University education changed everything in terms of my worldview and how I'm able to acquire knowledge. And this, my professor I talked about, taught me something about networking and working with people. And I remember when I was working with him, we were probably about 3 or 4 postgraduate students doing masters, and he was always telling us about the power of teamwork. And when I got to Canada, I also met a professor, the man that supervised my PhD, one Dr. K.C. Watts. He also believed in teamwork. And so under him, we were probably about 30-something PhD students, and we were all working together, of course, in different fields. I was doing agricultural engineering. We had some students in mechanical engineering, some in applied mathematics, some in biomedical engineering. Very versatile professor. But as PhD students under him, we were made to work together, complementing one another. And so I grew up with that. And all my PhD students, or everybody that has done master's, PhD with me, by the way, some of them are now professors like me, I've always taught them that the power of networking and teamwork, working with people, exchanging knowledge. That knowledge you have, if you don't transfer it to anybody, that knowledge will one day die with you. Nobody will be on this earth till you become Methuselah. So one of the major thing I would like to be remembered for is knowledge. People, we should be able to acquire knowledge, develop knowledge, and then share that knowledge with people. And that is why in everything I do, in my academic work, even in my professional life, I'll always have 1 or 2 people around me. And these are the foot soldiers, but I also make sure that what I know, I quickly transfer it to them. And it has worked for me. Most of these, my former PhD students now, when they join me as PhD students, in most cases, they know little to nothing in terms of what we do as academics, writing papers, doing research, attracting grants. But I immediately download whatever information I have or whatever knowledge I have in my head to these young ones. And what makes me happy is that when I do that, in a matter of months, or maybe a year or 2, this young man or woman even becomes better than me in a particular field. And so most of the things I now do with them, they're the ones leading. So when I look back where I picked this person from, it tells me that I've been able to transfer knowledge to somebody and the person is now flying with it. Just like I benefited from the 2 professors I talked about at the beginning. Without them, I wouldn't have been able to do anything to learn or know what I know today. And so that knowledge transfer is really key. And that's why I write a lot, hoping that those things that I write will move beyond me and this knowledge can be transferred to people for the betterment of humanity. Actually, even in my own time, I remember as an engineering student, the first 2-3 years of being an engineering school, you will notice that all fields of engineering do the same thing. You do maths, physics, engineering, drawing, all those fundamental principles of engineering is the same. But I remember at that time, what was the reigning thing then was civil engineering, because that was when a lot of construction was going on in Nigeria. So everybody who came to study engineering was dreaming of becoming a civil engineer. But of course, these things are transient. They change. After some time, it was electronics. Now I don't even know what it is. Just like you said, everybody wants to be a content creator. But what I'm telling young people is that we should see the digital technologies that we're all enjoying and doing that content creation as a tool. The digital technology is a tool. So that tool should be used for making the different professions more productive. not to the point where you now become a digital content creator for nothing, maybe for creative arts. And I can step back a little bit to what I said that that got me interested in agriculture. Two things. One is the case of agriculture. I like food. I like food production. The fact that you can plant something and it grows, and tomorrow that single seed yields so much. Same thing with animals. I also, at the back of my father's house, we had a goat barn. And I remember every sibling has a goat, all of them in the goat barn. So you always want your goat to outperform the one of your brother or your sister. And when your goat gives birth, the children of the goat belongs to you. And when they are sold, your tells you that they've sold your goods. Of course, they will give you the money. But all these things were things that interested me. But I also didn't want to end up with the typical farmer, like the typical farmer who was working with his hoe and machete and all that, suffering, and at the end of the day, not even being able to put food on the table. Same thing with even fishing. I'm not too far from the riverine area of Anambra State. And so we're also doing fishing. And I also saw fishermen that went to fish a whole day and came back with just little to nothing in terms of harvest. So I had this at the back of my mind that there has to be a better way of doing this. The second thing example I wanted to give is teaching. As I told you, my father was a teacher, primary school teacher. I like teaching, I love teaching. But I always say, not the type my father did. And that was how I actually got interested in academics, beyond what I want to learn and what I want to teach people. I said, I don't mind being a teacher, but not at the level of, teaching with nothing in your pocket. So same thing can be applied to the issue of digital technology. These things are tools that can be used. Now, if you take agriculture as an example, the initial impression people get is that when you study agriculture, you are going to end up being a farmer. Remember, he didn't say you are getting BSc farming. It's BSc agriculture, and there's a lot of difference between agriculture and farming. So the same thing that people do with a lot of drudgery, which is actually what makes people don't want to go into farming. Nobody really wants to do that. But when you study agriculture, you see that there are modern ways of agriculture. In other words, you can use machines. You can also use inputs such as fertilizer. Even your mobile phone or laptop can be used to improve your productivity in farming, or rather in agriculture. What that then means is that you can actually run a farm without getting yourself dirty. If people are worried about dirty hands or the drudgery, but I don't think it's actually the issue of dirty hands. Another example I give people is, before I traveled to Canada, we had cleaners in my department at Nsukka. And of course, you see these cleaners, they have to sweep with brooms, they have to mop, once you see a cleaner, you know it's a cleaner. But when I got to Canada, in my department, the same agricultural engineering department that I had at Nsukka, the first day I saw the cleaner that cleans the department, I didn't know he was a cleaner. He was well dressed in his suit, in his overall, with boots, with everything. And I became friendly with him, actually. And I noticed that when he finishes his work and he zips out his overall, he's actually in suit, cleaner. And you see him, you know he's a comfortable person, but his job is to clean that office. And he does that cleaning with equipment. In other words, he doesn't sweep with broom, he sweeps with machines. vacuum cleaners, all kinds of things that when he has to do them, you'll even like to do it with him because of the way he kicks and the way he does the job. I had another friend I ran into in Canada also. At that time, he was a plumber. And if you see him when he's ready to do his plumbing job, you will love to be a plumber because he looks like an astronaut. He has all his equipment, he has everything covered, he's doing the same plumbing job that nobody wants to go under a pipe to do something. So what I'm trying to say is that for modern agriculture, people should realize that what we need to do is to mechanize. When we mechanize and then we ensure that the inputs we need, like the crops, fertilizer, whether it's organic or synthetic fertilizer, all the inputs like improved seed varieties. You've seen tomatoes that can grow, you can grow what you would have harvested from a hectare, you can grow it in this small room where we are now, under greenhouse environment. You still harvest the same kind of tomatoes, in terms of quantity. What you would have grown in a big farm, like 1 hectare, you grow it in a small room. Now, in that kind of environment, under controlled environment, even a graduate will be glad to do that because you are using technology, you can even predict the yield that you are going to get because you are using modern improved varieties, improved things that can double or triple the yield. Same thing applies to all the other things we do. If you look at the way we handle food products, of course, nobody would like to be the person that will climb a 911 if you are moving tomatoes or onions or potato all the way from Jos to Lagos. Because really, agriculture involves the entire value chain from production to transportation to processing. Now, any aspect of the value chain of agriculture in Nigeria as of today is not mechanized, and there are no inputs, and that's why the youths are running away, shying away from farming. But if these things are modernized so that if you graduate and you are interested in post-harvest systems, that is handling these things from the farm to where they are processed or eaten. And you have, for example, a cold chain system where you have trucks, you have air conditioners that extend the shelf life of the crop. You find that a graduate will willingly do that because you are not going to suffer, there won't be drudgery, and you'll be making money because of the level of operation, because you are now operating at a very high level where the productivity is very high. Same thing applies to turning, I give another example, turning fruit juice, or rather turning fruits to fruit juice. In our traditional system, you can imagine if you are to serve orange to 100 people and you start peeling, it will take you some time to peel the number of oranges. But there are now machines that can transform that orange to orange juice that can be served to more than 100 people in one go. All these things are what agricultural engineering does, or what modern agriculture teaches. And if we are to transform our agriculture to a point where we are operating like this, then young people, of course, it means you can use your mobile phone, you can do that content creation. So that content creation now becomes something that has economic value. That person that studied agricultural economics or animal science can actually use the content creation to create e-commerce for that particular product or different agricultural products. So that's I always give this example. If you are traveling and along the road you see oranges, you see mangoes, you can just stop and buy one basket for 2,000. That same basket, by the time you get to Abuja and you go to the market, that same basket will be like 10,000. Now, content creation can bring up this in such a way that the value of this particular commodity between this point and this point is known, which means somebody can now use that as agri-business and know that he can set up a system to move these products from where they are to where the price has doubled or tripled, and he makes his money. That is part of agriculture, and that is what agriculture teaches. So young people should not see agriculture as just being in the farm. It also involves all the entire value chain up to processing. But even that production, I've been in a farm in UK, and this couple, they were running a mixed farm, both animals, plants, crops, and so on. And they had only one child, a girl. And that girl on her own decided to study agriculture in the university because she wanted to take over the farm run by the parents. And I was interviewing her. I was trying to find out what made her. She said, no, that she's very well. The only thing she had done now, when she finished, she now came to the farm with the knowledge she had gotten from the university and has transformed that farm into a multi-billion naira business. And mind you, there were only three. That is the father, the mother, and this young girl running an entire farm. What does that tell you? They had to leverage on technology. They were using all kinds of, in fact, they had over 5,000 cows, for example, but every cow there is controlled remotely. The cows know when they want them to go and graze, they trigger something that makes them to leave the confinement where they are, and they go and graze. When it's time for them to come back, they trigger something with something that is attached to their ear that gives them signal that they need to get back to the house, and they all come back into the where they are supposed to be in the pan. And then the milk they produce, for example, when it's time for milking, machines do the milk. So with that kind of environment, we wouldn't want to work there. One is that it's not tedious, you are using machines, everything they are doing is computerized. So with digital technologies, modern farming will be really very, very interesting to young people, and they can still do their content creation. They're doing that content creation for business. So you can use it to know where the inputs are, where people can sell their products. Even to the point, there's a project we're doing now on how to help farmers to even deal with crop health, soil health. With your mobile phone, you can now point your mobile phone camera on the crop or on the soil, and all the input information you require can be through systems in the cloud, compare somewhere, and then you can just, for example, point your phone at the crop, and you'll be able to see what is wrong with the crop, assuming that the crop has some deficiency, or maybe the crop needs water at that time. So modern technologies have gone to a point where they are very useful, to the point that even our youths and young people should be interested in agriculture, because all the digital technologies are now available in farm work. I know that with knowledge, we can go places as a nation. Part of, I think it's said in one of the religious sayings that my people die for lack of knowledge. Many things are going on, many ideas are coming up, there are so many applications that people don't even know about. I tell people that most of these are mobile devices. We can only use, most people use just 10 to 20% of the power of. And there are, when you look at the NSI, or the National System of Innovation of Nigeria, you will see that within the universities, polytechnics, research institutes, there's a lot of research that has been done, but people don't even know about this research. When I say people, I mean consumers of this knowledge, whether they are manufacturers or business people or individuals, random people, individuals. Many people don't even know that these research results are there. So the idea of your television, the idea I understand from what you are doing is, you want to look at knowledge that is coming out from research centers, and then you want to bring it to the public so people are aware of technologies that are available and what science and technology can do in terms of improving our livelihood. So, message I have for you is continue what you are doing. You may not know it, but you are adding very significantly to the growth of the Nigerian economy, the of humanity.